the part of the afternoon where I get to sit and watch your eyes droop. Because you all have had a wonderful meal, and it's only natural that you want to kind of fall asleep. I want to encourage you. I don't take offense. I want you to hear every word. Okay, so if you need to stand up, if you need to move around, do whatever it takes to stay awake. I understand. Okay? If I wasn't standing up, actually, I'd probably fall asleep. But anyway, we talked this morning and we established that music without words is a language in and of itself, right? But people will say to me oftentimes, you know, you can talk to me until like you're blue in the face. I still don't get it. Can you show me? Can you illustrate? And so what I want to do is kind of give you a little illustration so that those of you that might have questions, some of us already know it. In some respects, I could be preaching to the choir. But in other respects, people often ask, well, give me something to show, something to prove. So we're going to take a look at that today and just see some examples and also understand a little deeper the power of music, how it's being used, and where do we as Christians draw the line with regards to what is appropriate for us to be listening to. So, but before we do that, I want to ask you to listen to something else. We established this morning that the purpose for our existence is to prepare for heaven and to help others to do the same. We established also that the purpose for music for the Christian is to glorify God. And we also established, I believe, that music without words communicates. But I'm going to ask you to listen to something again. You don't have to close your eyes, but just listen. And I want you to tell me what your thoughts are. Do I have sound on this? Okay. I was looking for that young lady this morning said that it sounded like terror or death or something. But anyway, I want you to listen to this and tell me what thoughts come to your mind. What thoughts come to your mind?
Something scary.
Something scary. Absolutely. Okay, anyone else? Something is about to happen. That's right. Anyone else?
If someone is being chased.
Someone's being chased. Yes, sir. Amen. Would you say something? I thought it was someone over here, one of the young people. Something sad. Very good. Anyone else? Yes.
Like a passing plane.
A passing plane. Interesting. Hey, it's communication. That's what, yeah. Okay, anyone else? Yes.
He's talking about playing very slow, but I'm talking about very slow bears. In the beginning.
He said a very slow bear is coming out of the woods. Yes. I have seen that. I actually lived in the woods in the United States and I've seen bears coming out. Okay, basically, you get the message, all right? This morning, everything, for the most part, except for one individual, everything was on a positive note. This is of a negative nature, or a depressing nature, if you'll know, okay? So, music has the power to affect our thoughts and feelings. And we also talked this morning about the understanding that by beholding, you become changed. You are what you eat. What you take in is what's going to come out. So, that being the case, and seeing that we are looking for that blessed hope and the glorious appearing of our Lord and Savior, we need to guard the avenues of our souls. That's what we're cautioned to do. So that the words of our mouths, the meditations, our thoughts and feelings, God wants to give us the mind of Christ. We will think what God thinks. That's what he wants us to do. That's when he gave Adam the opportunity to name the creatures. He said, he put the animals in front of him, and they paraded in front of him. And he said, Adam, what's that? Adam said, it's a bear. He said, that's right, that's what I would call it. What's that? It's a lion. Very good, Adam. That's what I would call it. I can see the Father teaching his son. That's what he wants for us. He wants us to have the same thoughts and feelings that Jesus would have. Romans 12, 1 and 2 says, I beseech ye therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Why is that our reasonable service? Jesus died for you and me. And so is it much for him to expect that he wants us to render obedience and love back to him? He says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed. In other words, don't bring the things of the world into your home, into your heart, into your life, into your church. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you might know, you may prove what is that good and acceptable will of God. This is where we have the power of choice. That's why God gives us the power of choice. When something evil is coming in, and you recognize that you have the power to say no, or call upon the Lord and say, Father, I'm weak, but you promised you'd help me. Give me strength. Put a desire in my heart for the things that are pure and lovely, the things that will lift my mind to heaven. So what is good music? How can we know? How can we discern what is appropriate music? Music, good music, is a balance between three basic elements: melody, harmony, and rhythm. Okay, there are other elements, but these are the basics, the main areas. Melody is the most prominent part of music, and it tells the story of the piece. It should rise and fall. A melody that's static basically will bore you to death, put you to sleep, has an hypnotic effect. The melody must have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you must have, on good music, a sense of completion. Okay? It also must have, as I said before, a climax and then a resolve. And it will be written in such a way that will elicit a particular response. One of my favorite pieces, something to listen to that always elicits a wonderful response, is Handel's Messiah. Okay? Powerful music. And it always, I get chills. You know, there's certain aspects of it, I won't go into it, but good music will, you're going to respond to good music. Harmony is produced by the chords which match the key structure in which the melody is written. It's the sound that we hear when various parts of the music coincide. As melody provides the profile for a piece of music, the harmony, you could say, is its personality. Chords can provide both rest and unrest. What we were listening to a few minutes ago, those were minor chords. Now, it's not to say that minor chords are bad, but if you put several of them together in succession, you tend to have more of a low-key or melancholy experience. Whereas the major chords will give you an uplifting type of experience. Now, we're going to look at rhythm. Rhythm. Well, actually, I skipped over harmony. I don't want to get. We listen to harmony with the part of the mind that is more involved with the intellectual. And that's why, for example, pieces like that are written like Mozart, it's like, I like to use this analogy. I like to go in the gym and I like to work out and exercise my muscles. You gotta exercise your brain too. And so certain music actually will exercise your brain, and then there's certain types of music that will actually cause your brain to atrophy. Music that is just the constant repetition will actually put your mind to sleep. Rhythm is what makes the music move, and without rhythm, all good music has to have rhythm. Rhythm is the orderly movement of music through time. If you don't have rhythm, it's dead. Melody and harmony must unfold together, and rhythm makes the simultaneous unfolding possible. So melody is the part of the brain that deals with the aesthetic and the emotions. Harmony, as I said before, is the part of the brain that deals with the intellectual. Now, note this. The rhythm, we respond to the rhythm. And that's why I shared with you this morning how that little child who's never heard the music before will respond in that manner. We respond as well. And that's why people that dance to the music put the people in the world, put the emphasis on the beat. In a good piece of music, the strongest beat in the pattern or measure would be on the downbeat or the first beat of the pattern. If the pattern has 4 beats, the strongest beat is the first, and the second strongest beat would be the third. So, I remember when I was young and I would watch the conductor, and he'd usually start 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Rock music, on the other hand, reverses the common order of the beat by placing the emphasis on what is known as the offbeat, backbeat, or the emphasis on the 2 and the 4. Now I'm going to illustrate just a little bit, but so that you understand, because it's going to show up later on in this demonstration. This is what's called a trap set, first of all, and I'll talk about that also. But it was designed to reproduce those particular rhythms. We'll talk about that. This will show you where the emphasis is on the 2 and the 4. 2. 2. 3. Got it? Yeah? One of the basic characteristics of rock music is the constant repetition of chord patterns, the beat, and the narrow range of notes or rhythmic figure. Now, this incessant repetition should, when we talk about having Christian rock, for example, this constant repetition should raise flags about the suitability of the music to be used in worship or evangelism, because constant repetition has a hypnotic effect on the mind. Again, I told you, the people in the world understand this. I'm going to share a quote with you by a man named Mickey Hart, famous drummer. He spent years just studying the art, if you will, of drum playing. He used to play for a group called the Grateful Dead. Just the name of it should cause you to stop and think. But Mickey Hart is quoted as saying, "Drumming is made for trance and for ecstatic states. The basis of percussion, the way they use it, is redundancy, and redundancy is the basis of trance." In other words, they want to put you in a trance. If you walk into, for example, a nightclub, you walk in there for the first few seconds, you're hearing that constant driving beat. Within the first 45 seconds, everyone in that club is in a semi-state of trance, because the music does that to you. And the disc jockey will tell you, I can control this group. I can get them to do whatever I want them to do. And it's true. And he plays with the people in the club. David Winter is quoted in the book Music and Balance. He says, an incessant beat does erode a sense of responsibility in much the same way as alcohol does. You feel in the grip of a relentless stream of sound to which something very basic and primitive in human nature responds. Okay? So when people say that doesn't affect me, I'm telling you, our bodies respond to the rhythm. Okay, you got the message. The constant driving beat, the purpose of it is to put you into a state of trance. Take a look at this from an expert.
Music seems to have a special power to animate us. Kant called music the quickening art. There's something about rhythm as a start, which compels one to move with the beat. This, by the way, is an exclusively human propensity. Children spontaneously move with the beat. No animal does so spontaneously. And so there's something about the rhythm of the music which has a dynamic, animating, propulsive effect and gets people moving in sympathy with it and gets people moving in sympathy with one another, so that the rhythm of music has a strong bonding thing. People dance together, move together. Perhaps in primitive societies they would hoe together and do agricultural activities together. And probably rhythm is very much at the birth of music.
Look at the control that this man has over this crowd. Because of the rhythm. Second selected messages, page 36 and 38 says, those things which have been in the past will be in the future. Satan will make music a snare by the way in which it is conducted. No, she says, those things which have been in the past, and you would ask, well, was that in the past? The particular rhythms that are being used there are the rhythms that are taken from pagan worship. When we talk about Exodus chapter 32, where the people when Moses came down off the mountain, the rhythms were very similar to, if not the same rhythms, probably played in a different way, because with the instruments and the technology that we have today, of course, it's played differently, but the rhythms were the same. I want to talk about the trap set, because I often tell people, well, people ask me the question, is the drum sinful, or is this particular instrument sinful? And in the past, people have said certain things were sinful. Basically, I don't believe there is such a thing as a sinful instrument. It's how it's played. For example, I used to think that the saxophone could only be played in jazz, for jazz, because that's the only way that I had heard all my life. I heard someone some years back actually play a saxophone appropriately. So it's the manner in which it's played. But when it comes to the trap set, I want to give you the history of how it was created. Because this is the only instrument that I have to question whether or not, yeah, and as I talk, I'll share with you. This is a book written by a man named Carl Zattelbasilis. And he lived the life. He was a rock and roll drummer, a jazz drummer for many years in Canada. He now is a Seventh-day Adventist pastor in the Michigan Conference. And he gave his heart to the Lord. And he wrote this book. And he actually does a seminar on music. And he said, with regards to the trap set, it is a unique instrument specifically designed to play rock and jazz. A rock or jazz drummer would never buy a trap set to play it like a percussionist in an orchestra. So note, I'm not saying that all percussion is bad. There is a time and a place for everything and a manner in which it is used. He continues.
What is a trap set?
Did you see the... Hold on, I'll take it back.
First of all, people don't know.
Okay. We're gonna... The trap set is actually what you saw that guy playing. You know.
Oh, the whole thing.
Exactly.
The whole drum.
And the reason it's called a trap set,
Okay. The drum set.
you see that there? That's a trap set. The reason it's called a trap set is it's short for a word, an English word called contraption. A contraption, something that's kind of put together. Okay? Okay. So, excuse me?
Still, that's...
Awesome, okay. All right, so, he says the sole purpose of the trap set is to produce rock, rhythms, and its hybrids, like soft rock, punk rock, heavy metal, acid, alternative, all of the different names that they have created in this modern world. But the basic underlying foundation comes from these rhythms that originally had their origin in pagan and voodoo worship. Okay? And I'll express that, I'll show that to you. He says, I've never heard a recording of a modern trap set being used to play anything other than a hybrid of rock or jazz. Even when the trap set is used to accompany an orchestra, the music is no longer associated with the Baroque, classical, or romantic genres of music. Instead, it is transformed into a rock or jazz hybrid. Now note this quote, this statement here. He says, the rhythms of rock music are so powerful. Remember, I think it was Socrates that said, music is potent. The rhythms of rock music are so powerful that the traditional instruments found in the orchestra and the way that they are played are automatically grafted into the rock rhythms. So, I'm going to give you an illustration. I'm going to play a few pieces. I'm going to play 4 pieces for you. And I want you to tell me, well, I'll ask you a question if you hear these pieces. We're going to take 4 pieces that you're probably familiar with, and we're going to play them the normal way, the way they were written. And then we're going to listen to them with the rock rhythm and see what happens. Associate that with the Lone Ranger. It's plenty of rhythm, but it's not there's percussion in there too, but it's appropriate to use, and it's telling a story. When I was growing up, I used to dream about riding a horse to that music. The Lord says, delight thyself also in the Lord, He will give you the desires of your heart. When I was older, He gave me my own horse. And I got to ride the range, and in my mind I was going, God is good. All right, let's listen to this piece. that you might hear at weddings. Did all four of those pieces pretty much paint a picture in your minds? Yeah. They tell a story, don't they? Now let's see what happens when we put those pieces to a rock rhythm. Try marching down the aisle on your wedding day today. So what happened to the music? What happened to the music, young lady? What happened to it? It was ruined out of the mouth of babes. Praise the Lord. Thank God that she has a discernment. Yes?
But it also, when you put a rock rhythm behind it,
Yes.
it starts to sound all the same.
There you go.
There's hardly any difference anymore between the various pieces of
Exactly. Did you hear what he said? It loses its individuality. The rhythms of rock music are so powerful that it actually transforms the music. And believe me, it transforms your mind and body as well. And we will establish, we'll show that it does have an effect on the body later as well. So, the trap set is unique, not only in its construction, but also in the way that it is played. The fact that drums are mentioned in the Bible, and people tell me that, what about Psalm 150 and Psalm 149? The Lord says, make a joyful noise and all of this. And drums are in the Bible. Yes, drums are percussions in the Bible. But you know, we have to learn to read the Word of God in context. Okay? And this is where the Lord wants us to wake up and study. Thy way, O God, is in the sanctuary. In the sanctuary, there were only 4 instruments used. The harp, the lyre, the trumpet, and the cymbal. And I believe there was a reason. Now, it doesn't come out and say it, but back in those days, in the early days, the drum was used in pagan worship. It was used for sun worship, and it actually represented the sun god. So, the reason that I believe that the fact that there's no drums, there are no drums in any of the worship ceremonies in the Bible, the worship services. When people read Psalm 150 and Psalm 149, those psalms that talk about, note that the majority of people that were in there, if you read the Bible, you'll see that the women, it was women that were playing those instruments. And you have to ask yourself the question, why was it that it was women? And the simple answer is, it was not a worship service. It was a celebration. The men are coming back from war. Psalm 150 has nothing to do with a worship service. It's the men, in Psalm 149, it's the men coming back from war. The people are rejoicing the victory. And the women are playing the instruments because the men were all going to war. And you'll find that throughout the Bible, but nowhere in God's Word do you find the drums in a worship service, let alone a trap set. So people, it's a lack of understanding when people say, use that argument to bring the trap set into our church services. The fact that drums are mentioned in the Bible leads many to believe that playing traps is acceptable. But the trap set was invented in the early 1900s, to reproduce specific rhythms. And I'm going to tell you how that came to be. When the slaves were brought over from Africa to the United States, for some reason, the Christian slave owners, and I always struggle with that because how could you oppress and make people slaves and call yourself Christian? But they took the drums away because they recognized that this was of a pagan nature. So they were denied the opportunity to keep their drums. But the slaves wanted to find a way to preserve their worship. Okay? So, when they could, in every opportunity that they could, they would slip away into the woods and they would do their voodoo worship. But they had to find a way to keep those rhythms, to preserve those rhythms. How do you think they did that? How do you keep those polyrhythms, multiple rhythms that are played at the same time? Tap dancing. Everybody knows what tap dancing is? Yes. Okay. What is interesting is that the slave owners would see them, and they actually would have them tap dance for them, and they would think, oh, they're just having fun, you know, those simple people are having fun. And the slaves were actually laughing inside because they realized the rhythm is in my feet. I'm keeping the rhythm. And so as they were doing that, and they thought it was just entertainment, the slave owners, the slaves used that to preserve those rhythms that they used in their pagan and voodoo worship. Now somebody came along, saw them dancing, tap dancing, and said, what, can I create an instrument that will reproduce those polyrhythms? And that's how the trap set was born. In the early 1900s, someone actually put something together that you could play those polyrhythms. So this is why I question this instrument, because it was specifically designed to reproduce the rhythms that are used in pagan and voodoo worship. The trap set should never be confused with other drums, such as snare drums, the bass drum, tom-toms, and other percussion instruments that one would normally find in an orchestra. Does anybody ever remember, well, the older folks like, Jesus loves them too. I used to sing that when I was in the cradle roll or whatever. Jesus loves them, little ones like me. And then I was so much fun saying, older folks like you. Now I'm one of the older folks. But anyway, does anyone remember this guy? Little Richard, one of the icons in the rock and roll industry. Little Richard, believe it or not, was a Seventh-day Adventist. And every now and then he still shows up in Adventist churches. So, if God brings him to your mind, keep him in your prayers. Because he had a struggle going back and forth. Once you've been out in the world, unless you really take hold of God, and you see the fame and the glory that you supposedly get there, human beings were not meant to be worshipped. It's a mistake because it goes to their heads. And so he's had a struggle. But he's another one that I just say, keep him in your prayers. But he is quoted as saying, my true belief about rock and roll, and there have been a lot of phrases attributed to me over the years, is this: I believe this kind of music is demonic. This is out of his mouth. He who made a very good living at leading other people to play this music and to listen to it. He says, a lot of the beats in music today are taken from voodoo, from the voodoo drums. If you study music and rhythms, like I have, you'll see that it is true. So this isn't Derrol Sawyer telling you this. This is the people that know. The Lord has already told us. But sometimes I guess we need to get reinforcement. I don't know. But if we just take the Lord when He says it, we will never go down the wrong road. What is voodoo ritual? The drum is a very important instrument used in voodoo ritual to contact what they refer to as a loa, or a lesser god. And this practice has its origin in ancient pagan worship. In pagan worship, the drum is the symbol of the sun god. Okay? This is why I believe that you won't find it in the sanctuary. The follower of voodoo seeks to incorporate or bring those gods into himself by riding and leaping through a dance while drums bang out complex rhythms. When just the right rhythm is found for the individual god, if you will, the dancer takes it up, and this god, which in reality is not a god, but it's evil spirits, enter their bodies. Now, I'm going to let you hear, again, the 2/4 beat. Here's your trap set. Emphasis on the 2 and the 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. This is same thing. 2, 4, 2. And what they're in the process of doing is calling in the evil spirit into their body. Now you have several rock and roll artists who have said that they have had this experience. They, when they're writing their music, it's an experience where the spirits come into them. Not just rock and roll, people in the entertainment industry. Denzel Washington is quoted as saying, on 60 Minutes, a very popular program in the United States, there was a movie that he had made called Glory. And in this movie, he did a phenomenal portrayal of this character. But when asked, how did you do that? His answer was, I got down on my knees and I called the spirits. And of course, the spirits took over. Well, what spirit? You have to ask yourself, what spirit? We're not wrestling with flesh and blood, brothers and sisters. We have to be very careful. The monotonous, repetitious pulse of the drum is used to put a person into a state of trance, to a point where he or she is unable to say no to the power of suggestion. So can we have? We need to be able to make sound decisions when we come to church. Okay? Can you have Christian rock where the music can cause you to lose your ability to make sound decisions? This is called at the crossroads, the point where the physical meets the spiritual. The demon is able to enter the person and speak through him. His physical and mental powers are immediately heightened. He becomes godlike himself. Animals will often be sacrificed to appease the spirits. The religion is strictly Dionysian or sensual, and the dances often end in wholesale copulation. Got that? Let's go back to Exodus 32. That's how that's what was going on when Moses came down off the mountain. He said, it is also interesting and necessary to note that the meaning of rock and roll and jazz themselves should be very unattractive to Christians. The phrase rock and roll was coined by a disc jockey to describe the act of fornication in the backseat of a car. That's what rock and roll is all about. So when people say, let's rock and roll, they don't realize what they're talking about. Because it happened back then, and we get so accustomed to saying certain things, we don't even know what we're saying sometimes. Also, with regards to jazz, people don't know the reason or the meaning of jazz. Jazz is a word, a four-letter word, one of the basis or the vilest four-letter word in the English language used to describe sex. That's what jazz means. So people don't understand that. And so they play Christian jazz. Do you understand what I was saying? When I say what the four-letter word is. Yeah, that's what jazz means. Jazz is not a bad word now, but almost certainly is of extremely low origin, referring to copulation before it was applied to music. If the truth were known about the origin of jazz, it would never be mentioned in polite society. Okay? Now, I like this, and when I came across this, I was very happy because I had taken this into some of my brothers and sisters in some of the black churches in the United States. And they'll come at me and they'll say, man, you're messing with my roots. If we say that we're Christians, I love in Hebrews where it talks about Moses and it gives us that list in Hebrews 11. They sought a heavenly citizenship. And as Christians, that's what brings us together. That's true. But in reality, this is not the black heritage. And you know what was really interesting? I walked into an African church years ago in Minnesota and had an interesting experience. I walked in to give, I was asked to come and do the seminar there. And I walk in and I look up on the stage and there's a trap set. And I said, oh Lord. And it was a Friday night and the choir was rehearsing for what they were going to sing the following Sabbath. And the pastor, the choir director is playing this song, and while she's directing, she's kind of swaying her body and they're all getting into it. And the pastor looks at me and he says, is there anything wrong with that song? And I said, Lord, help me, help me. I thought I was going to be like tarred and feathered. But you know, God is good. Because these people, when I shared this with them, they told me, this is truth. There was a woman in that audience also, talking about speaking in tongues. This woman got up and she explained to me, she said, God has brought you here, but she needed a translator to tell me. And she's telling me all these things about how she understood, and then all of a sudden it occurs to me, she had someone translating so that I could understand. And I said, how did she understand? And she said she understood every word that I said. That was the Lord. She needed to hear that, and that was the Lord. And they stood up, and they decided to get rid of the trap set. Out of their place. Praise God. But I've been to other churches where I was almost tarred and feathered because they were saying, these are my roots. But Eurydice Osterman says, the roots of the rock beat are to be found not in the religious music of the African American heritage, but on secular and often irreligious music known as rhythm and blues. Okay? And then she explains why this music came about. This music became the expression of those blacks who strayed away from or rejected the Christian faith. And many blacks did reject it because they couldn't understand, they couldn't make the association either as to how can you people call yourselves Christians when we are not allowed to even drink from the same water fountain and we have to walk on the other side of the street. They were angered. They said, this is Christianity, we'll come up with something different. See, that's Satan's plan. That's where prejudice destroys the plan that God had for us as a people. So the blacks strayed away from or rejected the Christian faith. They wanted to become respected entertainers by playing a secular music. The mood of blues is one of sadness, punctuated by a regular heavy beat. The emphasis is on the pleasures of this world, especially the enjoyment of illicit sex before or outside of marriage. So that's what jazz is about. That's why jazz slips and slides the way it does. Because it's telling you something. There's a message in there. They don't hit the notes directly on. There's a message in the music. It's very sensual. This is something called the law of entrainment. All the way back in 1665, a Dutch scientist by the name of Christian Huygens discovered this concept. He noticed that when two clocks are near each other, they will soon lock up and tick together. Now, I've spoken to physicians who will tell me the same thing. If you put heart cells within close proximity of each other, they will lock up and start ticking together. Okay? So that says that the rhythm does have an effect on our bodies, the way our bodies are made. But I'm going to give you an illustration. This is going to take a few minutes, but watch what happens. Just so you know, this is not something that I have made up to convince you. Watch what happens in this little experiment here. These are metronomes. And where did they go? Come back. Come on. Okay. They're all beating different. I think there's one resistant, one known kid. I know. And he's going to behave himself in a minute. There you go. Isn't that amazing? So, when someone walks up to me, young people sometimes say, Mr. Sawyer, that doesn't affect me, that music doesn't affect me. I just kind of laugh inside, because it does.
Does it really not, right?
No!
It's mind-blowing. This is
Because God made us with certain rhythms, okay? There are natural rhythms. Our body functions and beats, our heart beats on a natural rhythm.
These things are fixed. I mean, every musician knows it. If they are fixed, if they...
It's called the law of entrainment. A law stands. There are natural laws, and that's one of them. So, if the source of two rhythms are in close proximity, they become the same. So if you put the unnatural rock rhythm into your body, the rhythms of the body will lock into the rock rhythms, causing all kinds of problems in the body eventually. Okay? Have you ever been in a mall? I challenge you to watch when people are walking into the mall and the music, rock and roll music is playing. I've stood and watched. And people will be walking a normal gait, but if there's this particular rhythm going, before you know it, they're just walking in stride to the music. Not even aware of it, but they're walking in stride to the music. And it's kind of difficult to break out of it. You have to really try to force yourself. So, there are natural rhythms in nature. Rainfall, ocean waves, the heartbeat, the rock rhythm in popular music are not natural. They're different from any natural rhythm found in the human body. The rock rhythms in popular music. After, we're going to skip this. Okay. Tests on the effects of music on living organisms, besides humans, have shown that special pieces of music, including the Blue Danube, aid hens in laying more eggs. I think many of us have heard these things. Music can also help cows to yield more milk. Researchers from Canada and the former Soviet Union found that wheat will grow faster when exposed to special ultrasonic and musical sounds. Rats were tested by psychologists to see how they would react to box music and rock music. The rats were placed into two different boxes. Rock music rats played in one of the boxes, while box music was played in the other box. The rats could choose to switch boxes through a tunnel that connected both boxes. Almost all of the rats chose to go into the box with the Bach music, even after the type of music was switched from one box to the other. Interesting. But you know, it's not. We respond to sound. Sound is very powerful. God is very powerful. And the Bible tells us He used sound to create the world. The Bible says He spoke the world into existence. But because you and I are so special, He spoke everything else into existence. He shaped and molded man. Because man, He wanted you to know just how special you are to Him. Do we not owe it to Him to worship Him in the appropriate way? Anybody ever know see these people? Again, they make no bones about what the guy on the bottom, his name is Gene Simmons, and he was a member of the group called KISS. KISS is an acronym for Knights in Satan's Service. People didn't know that. People listen to their music. Well, this guy, Gene Simmons, was interviewed. And when he was asked if parents should be concerned about teens listening to the music that they play, and why the parents were protesting their music, their appearance, his answer was, well, they should be concerned because we're into girls. That's what rock is all about. Sex with 100 megaton bomb, the beat. That says it in itself. There's a reason. That's one of the reasons for music. Linda Ronstadt, very famous singer in the United States, several years back. She says, debasement and obstacles is what love songs are about. The purpose of rhythm, the way they use it, is to get you into an orgiastic state of losing yourselves. But what does God say with regards to Christians? What does he call us to be? To have self-control. One of the fruits of the Spirit is self-control.
Amen.
Not losing yourself. Even if you run the race, you have to keep, as Paul said, under your body. Rock and roll music is musical pornography. Not my words. This is something written by a secular author. He said the throbbing beat of rock and roll, and this was written all the way back in the 60s, the throbbing beat of rock and roll provides a vital sexual release for its adolescent audience. Now, we as Christians know that adolescents are not even supposed to be thinking in those lines, if they're raised properly. But television tells you that something is wrong with you if you don't have a girlfriend at 12 or 13 years old. Maybe nowadays it's even younger. David Bowie, he says, rock has always been the devil's music. But you can't convince me that it isn't. Rock. Oh, Rolling Stone magazine. Now, because music has Christian words, that makes it acceptable. I'm going to give you some Christian words.
Gospel House.
Book of Revelation, chapter 7, verses 16 and 17. Yes, sir. They shall hunger no more, neither shall they thirst anymore. Preach out. For God shall wipe away, yes, sir, every tear from their eyes. Yes, sir. Get ready for the revolution.
It's very hard for me to play that. But my point, this is what our young people are looking at. And some of them are being told, as long as the words are appropriate, you're praising God. As long as the words are of a spiritual nature, because music, in and of itself, is without moral value. More Christian music. But we are cautioned. Sister White tells us, God tells us through his prophet, that the Holy Spirit never reveals itself in such methods, in such a bedlam of noise. This is an invention of Satan to cover up his ingenious method for making of none effect the pure, sincere, elevating, ennobling, sanctifying truth for this time. Two selected messages, page 36. For this time, not for her time, but for this time. God knew what we needed. God knew what we would be bombarded by in these last days. What kind of music is this? If I kept playing that, they'd start shouting out and screaming Christian words. That's heavy metal. It's Christian heavy metal. But what about this? A lot of Adventist youth are listening to this music because it doesn't have the drums in it. What kind of music is that? Very good. That's New Age music. New Age, or world music. How about you?
I mean, it doesn't sound so bad. So
It doesn't sound bad, but just give me a minute. Okay. It doesn't sound bad. Actually, it could be pretty. Okay?
it's not.
I'm not saying it's not. But now you gotta understand. Now, we know what we're dealing with, because he has a tendency to mix truth with error. Beauty with ugly. Okay? Gotta give me a minute. New age music. He said, what's wrong with it? He was asking what's wrong with it. Yes, sister. Yes.
When I hear that song, I get feeling as if I'm floating.
You're floating. Okay. And that's the effect that it wants to give you. Sister, did you want to say something?
Yes, I am very much concerned. Because you've been talking, hammering on the youth. Now this is what the young people's minds are centered upon. What about homes where parents?
Homes, you say?
Yes. In some homes where fathers put on this music, or mothers, you see them gyrating. What caution do you have to?
What caution do I have?
The council.
Well, here's my point. The majority of people are ignorant when it comes to music because we haven't taken the time to study it. We think because it's always been around that it's just something for pleasure. But everything, when we look into the Word of God and when we look into science and when we're doing what we're doing right now, what I'm trying to do is educate parents so that they won't make the same mistake that my dear mother made. My mother, God bless her, she did the best that she knew how. But she didn't understand about music. So like I told you, I don't think you remember, when I was here, I forget how long ago, but I shared with you that my mother, I was fascinated with the music that Harry Belafonte used to sing when I was young. And that music was, compared to what's out there today, that music was cradle roll, okay? But my mother, she told me not to go into the entertainment industry because that's what I wanted to do when I was 5 years old. But she allowed me to listen to Harry Belafonte's music. You see, she didn't understand true education. She didn't understand the importance of, even in our homes, just so that our children can stand the way Daniel and Joseph did in their homes. They were taught by their parents of the living God and the principles and the standard that He holds. If people will educate themselves and understand the power of music, then they'll start being more sensitive to what's coming in to the home. I'm not telling anybody what to do, but if I was you, I did this almost 30 years ago. I took my television set because God revealed that to me. And my wife was very angry. But you know what? I, as the priest, and I took the television and I threw it into the dumpster, and I threw it so hard. I wanted to make sure that nobody was able to pick it out of there and use it. Because I come to understand that even in the commercials, there are things that are being suggested to our young people. We have to be careful the schools that we send our children to. Because someone else is raising your children. And that's something that God gave you to do. Not the teacher, not the preacher. It's supposed to happen in the home. But most of us, at this point, don't understand. And it's not just music. We're being bombarded as Christians because Satan knows he's about out of time. So we really have to wake up and remember that this is the Day of Atonement, the anti-typical Day of Atonement. We're supposed to be searching our hearts and be preparing. Because when Jesus steps out of the most holy place, he that is filthy, let him be filthy still. He that is righteous, let him be righteous.
Thank you, brother.
So, the New Age music, its primary tool, is a primary tool of the New Age movement, okay? The philosophy of the New Age is actually a blend of Eastern mysticism, the occult, Zen Buddhism, seasoned with a few other tidbits of philosophy. And this is what's crazy. You see, I love the Bible and the Spirit of Prophecy because it's simple to understand. This says, the New Age movement teaches that everything, including us, is God. And that salvation comes by meditation, by an experience that unites us with the divine, becoming one with God. It teaches us that we are God, but in a sense, we are still becoming God too. Now, if that isn't stupid, what is? But you see, the New Age music teaches, it encourages you to empty your mind. But the Bible is very clear. Don't empty your mind. Don't let anybody empty your mind. You need to fill your mind. Thy word have I hid in my heart. Thy word have I hid in my heart, that I might not sin against thee. Because if you empty your mind, that gives the enemy an opportunity to come in and suggest or do whatever he wishes with your mind. So that's what's wrong with that music. Also, I said a good piece of music should have a beginning, tell a story, and have a climax and end. That New Age music is just on and on. Like this brother just said, he wants to take off and fly. Because it's appealing to your mind, you know. Whoa, I'm flying. But no, you're being hypnotized. Characteristics of New Age music. It's soothing, yes. It's relaxing, yes. Inspirational, but inspiration of which spirit? Moody. There's no tension and no resolve, and that's the difference. And it complements the New Age experience. 1 Corinthians 14:15 says, I will sing with the Spirit, and I will sing with understanding. Very important. Does anybody understand what she's saying? Good. All right. I don't usually pick on artists. I don't call artists names usually. I don't know what she's saying. She's singing in Gaelic. But I did some research because I said that a lot of young people at the time that I did this were coming to me saying, oh, we listen to this music when we study. It doesn't have the drums in it and so and so. So is there anything wrong with it? So I did some research, and the Lord helped me find this. Steve Voorburg has written a book called The Hour of the Witch. And in that book it says, written by a student, or 4 students. The name of the book is called Rocking the Goddess. It's the first book of its kind for the budding Wiccan. Does everybody know what a Wiccan is? Okay, somebody that's into witchcraft. Included here are interviews with students, faculty, and college administrators across the country, as well as profiles of Wiccan role models such as Anya. That's who will sing in the song. Stevie Nicks and Tori Amos. Now, I don't know what she was singing, but I need to know. If you're going to play the music, you need to know what's going on, because if I know that she is a witch, she could be calling in some kind of spell. And I want to tell you from experience that Satan, when we have certain things in our homes that are inappropriate, certain music, certain videos, it gives Satan a right to harass you. It opens the door for him to. Before I became a Christian, I was involved with someone who brought some of the stuff into my house. I've seen things moving around in the house, floating, doors opening and closing. Thank God for my Christian background. I realized what was going on. But the enemy is real.
Yes, sir.
And so, when I saw that, I did a purge. I cleansed my home. I got rid of stuff. I made sure that there was nothing in that house that could invite the enemy to give him a right to come into my house. He does occupy, he can use these objects, he can use these things and say, I have a right to be here because you brought me in. So this is what I'd say, young people, I don't know what she's saying, I can't condemn, but if I don't know what she's saying, but I know that she's a witch, I don't want it in my home. I don't want to listen to it. So, she makes no bones about it. She's a witch. I used to listen to this person, Stevie Nicks, a group called Fleetwood Mac. She acknowledges that she's into witchcraft. Okay? Matter of fact, a song that she made very famous called Nana is about a witch. I didn't know that. But look at what they have to say also. They are not ashamed. They're not hiding what they do. Many rock artists believe that they're channeling spirits when they create their music, and they boast of the ability to commune with the spirits. John Lennon, he said, when the real music comes to me, it has nothing to do with me, because I'm just a channel. It's given to me, and I transcribe it. You can find that in Mickey Hart's book, Spirit is a Sound. Tori Amos, she's quoted as saying, I want to marry Lucifer. I don't consider him an evil horse. It's arrogant to think that you can create music on your own. There is a co-creation going on. It's really nice when they visit my body. It's an energy force. Brothers and sisters, we're not playing games. There's a war going on. And it's for your mind. This man up here on the left, a man by the name of Anton LaVey, he's dead now, but he founded something called the Church of Satan. And you see Sammy Davis Jr., buddy with him. This is Beyonce, and if you look on her chest, she's wearing a goat's head. They don't hide what they're doing. The girl that's sitting there, Rihanna, I think is her name. If you'll note, her haircut is representing the goat's head, which is the representation of Satan. The goat is right next to her so that you can see how she deliberately cut her hair. Because she's sending a statement, she's sending a message that this is who she's in allegiance with. And young people are listening to their music and thinking that it's okay. It's not okay. This is not a game. The hand signal, Michael Jackson. All of these people, Beyonce and her husband, Jay-Z at the bottom, they're all making that signal because they're sending a message. It's just too many people doing it for it to be just a coincidence. Lady Gaga, listed in 2011 in the Guinness Book of Records as the most searched for female on the internet. In one of her recent songs, Judas is the name of the song, Lady Gaga blasphemes Christ, praising Judas for his betrayal of Christ, and saying that she'll insincerely wash the feet of Jesus with her hair. And it goes on. These people blaspheme God blatantly. Now, just to show the influence that these people have, she has sold an estimated 64 million albums worldwide. Been awarded 5 Grammy Awards among 12 nominations, 2 Guinness World Records. Time magazine has listed her in their Time 100 list of the most influential people in the world. I put this up here because there's young people in here that are struggling with the music. I want you to wake up. If there's older folks, because I don't know what goes on in your home. You know, Marilyn Mason was ordained to the Church of Satan by Anton LaVey. He ridicules Christians. In his song, I Don't Like Drugs, he describes God as an excuse for people's behavior in his song, We're From America. And he says, I refuse to be forced to believe in other people's interpretations of God. I don't think anybody should be. There's no one person that can own the copyright to what God means. If he doesn't change, he's going to find out. Okay? You know, we serve a loving God. And it amazes me at the patience of God. It says he's not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. And he's giving all of these people. I was looking at the other day, as the sister was talking about Saul this morning. And he was to annihilate, Saul was to annihilate the Amalekites. God gave them 400 years. They had harassed the children of Israel when they were coming out of Egypt. And God pronounced the sentence on them back then. But we know what God does, because he did this with Nineveh. When Nineveh turned around, he forgave them. And he gave the Amalekites 400 years to turn to God. At the point where they had to destroy every single last one of them, after 400 years of probation, he knew that even those little children were so wicked in their hearts that they would perpetuate the evil. And so it had to be destroyed. God hates killing his children, but he hates sin even more. And that's what's going to happen at the end of time. Very soon, he's going to have to put an end to sin. So if we're holding on to sin, if we're holding on to this music and saying, gotta have it, God's going to have to either you're going to let him take it away, separate you from it, or if you hold on to it, it's not you that he wants to destroy, but it's sin that he's going to destroy. What about rap music? Rap music, like the drum, because we hear Christian rap. It's not melodic. It's rhythmic speech. It's the counterfeit of singing. Rap music contradicts the Lord's command to sing and make melody. Okay, that's what's written in the Bible. This is Christian rap.
You can keep a crowd hyper, control the souls of the whole generation, kinda like a modern Pied Piper. Faces, you think you think of rap was the icon.
You can keep a crowd hyper, control the souls of a whole generation, kind of like a modern Pied Piper. And that's what Satan is doing. These people are singing these songs. This is supposed to be Christian rap. But they're telling you what they're doing. And we sometimes, I remember when I was young, I was sitting there singing the songs. This one is in my head. Barry Manilow said, I was inspired and I wrote this song in about 20 minutes. And I used to sing the song. I've been alive forever. And I wrote the very first song. I put the words and the music together. I am music, and I write the songs. I write the songs that make the whole world sing. I write the songs of love and special things. I write the songs that make the young girls cry. Now, why would you want to make the young girls cry? Does that sound like something that Jesus would do? I write the songs, I write the songs. My home lies deep within you. Where does God want to lie? God wants to be here. But the enemy wants to be there too. My home lies deep within you, and I've got my own place in your soul. Now when I look out through your eyes, I'm young again, even though I'm very old. Do you hear the message? I ran around singing that song, not realizing what I was singing. And that's what young people do today, because music is powerful. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry to take you back.
Excuse me.
Sorry to take you back from the drums.
Speak louder, please.
Okay.
You're going to have to amplify.
Sorry, I have to take you back on the drums. I'm African.
Yes.
Born and bred. I love the drum.
Okay.
I have beats in my house. I love to hear beats.
Mm-hmm.
So should I go through them out? Is it just any kind of drum?
I'm not saying that every rhythm that comes out of Africa is satanic.
But it's drum centered.
But what kind of drums do you have in your house? And what kind of rhythms are they playing?
How can I describe it?
How can you describe it?
It's drum.
If it's
sheepskin or cowskin, the usual African drums.
How do you feel when you listen to it? What happens to your body?
I grew up listening.
Excuse me?
I grew up listening to it.
I didn't ask you that.
I love it. That's what
I didn't ask you that.
It makes me feel like I'm at home.
It makes you feel like you're at home.
Yeah.
Can I share something with you, my sister? I'm not trying to attack you.
No. Yeah.
It's not about what you or I feel. It's what God says. Okay? And if you have a question, and I'm not telling you because I don't know what rhythms you're listening to, I'm specifically talking about if the rhythms where the emphasis is on the 2 and the 4, those are rock rhythms, those are voodoo rhythms. If you get the moving in your house, and you know what happens to you when you're in your house listening to your music, okay? Not my business. But take it up with the Lord. Because I promise you, God will reveal to you. I have another thing for you. If you have a question about the music, take a fast on music for about a month, and then go back and listen to it. And I'm sure, I tell you, from experience, God will reveal to you whether or not, and be praying while you're doing it, He will reveal to you whether or not you should keep that music in your home. Okay? All right, God bless you. Thank you for being bold enough to ask. Amen. God bless you. Yes.
I'm from Africa too.
Yes, ma'am.
And having so many years without contact with home, the African music was the only contact I had. So when new CDs will come out, especially my tribal language, I will go anywhere to buy it, and I'll have it at home. I remember there was a time that the Lord was taking me into a deeper commitment with Him.
Can everybody hear what she's saying? Okay, good.
The Lord was taking me into a deeper commitment with Him. And this music, I'll be playing it every day in the house. And at one point, I was watching a presentation on music, the music that is pleasing to God.
Yes.
And on that presentation, I was really overwhelmed that the music I had in the house was not pleasing to God. But just like you have said, if this music is not doing anything to you, take a sabbatical time off of it. Then you are able to determine who is ruling whom. I remember when the pastor gave an altar call, if you have this kind of music in the house, it's about time that you throw it away and look for music that invites the Spirit of God. I remember sitting on my couch. I remember saying, I'm moving. That's my tribal music. To that I remember my grandma. I've grown up with that. So when I throw that away, what connection do I have with them? And the pastor went on, calling. I'm calling on you. Wherever you are sitting, please take this truth to your heart. Then at one point, it was almost finished. And in my heart, I had this thing like, oh, he has finished, so I can pass this. Then he said, I'm going to extend it a little longer. There is somebody that God is speaking to your heart. And that you need to get up and do what the Spirit of God is asking you. I remember getting up, crying like a baby. I cried, my boys, they were sitting there looking at me like, what happened to mommy? I was weeping, and I walked and opened my covers and took the garbage and threw out all my CDs. And as I was throwing them on the floor, at one point, I just sat on the ground and wept like a baby. Then in the midst of that, I heard the Spirit of God confronting me. Why are you crying? So I was like, oh? I mean, why are you crying? To get rid of this evil you have in your home. That's why you are crying? That was hard. That was very hard. But that gave me also the strength to get up. I had DVDs that I didn't open yet. I used to buy them in series. Those days I had money, so I could buy them in series. And the Lord helped me to throw everything away. I didn't give to nobody. I threw it in the garbage, waited for the garbage truck to come, and it went directly in the garbage. But I tell you the truth, my sister, the true joy is not this our African music.
Amen.
The true joy is in Jesus.
Hallelujah.
When I threw that music away, I'm not going to lie to you, I cried. But when the Spirit talked to me, the Spirit of God, I am clearing you from the bondage of Satan. I had experience in my home, things could move in my home.
Yes.
And I didn't realize that those things had those doors open. When I got rid of all these things, I truly experienced the true peace. May God give you the strength as He did to me, and you will rejoice after.
Amen.
Thank you for sharing your testimony.
Actually, I don't have a question. I am glad that I'm here today because I told you I was getting up to these melodies of church melodies. And I'm from Australia, and we have also
Put the
rhythm.
mic by your mouth.
We also have rhythm music.
From Australia.
Yes, but I get stuck with gospel music. And I does not always know the word, so I hum them.
Yeah.
And then I go to my older mother and I ask her, explain me what this song is about. And she will say, it's like children, this maybe they take the children. From small I remember us singing these songs. What I want to say, don't forget, Satan is the director of music when he was an angel. So she said it's her African heritage. But Satan is heritage above heritage above heritage in music. So when we think that we are this rhythm that has us in control, Satan was there long before our African heritage, our Asian heritage. We have to remember, we have to break loose.
Amen.
It's a break loose.
Amen.
It's hard, but as she said, you cry out. And once you get the redemption, you are such a rich person.
Amen.
You really hear the difference in the word as you was explaining. I was all the way to you. And I love you. Thank you for this.
Amen.
Love you too, sister.
God bless you.
My thought also, remember, our feelings will deceive us. That's why we have the Word of God and we go by principle as opposed to our feelings. He does not like us to sing unto the Lord, so He has inspired a counterfeit for singing. So what does the Lord say in Isaiah 5, verse 20? He says, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. I'm going to ask you, what's wrong with this song?
Precious Redeemer and friend, who would have thought that a lamb rescued the souls of men? Oh, you rescued the souls of men.
I didn't mean to have that up there just yet. But that says it all. There's nothing really wrong with the song. The song is a very beautiful song. It's the manner in which it's being sung. And what I share, what I talk about is, because I see a lot of our young people getting up and mimicking what they see. I see the girls sing. And you know what? I mean, God bless them. They're trying to render an offering to God because this is all that they have seen. Our society has put this before them, and so they think that that's appropriate. This is where, as the sister was asking in the back, as parents, we have to educate our children. Because it's really not about me. It's not about the instruments. The music and the glory has to be directed to God. The manner in which the woman is singing is very sensual, and it could cause some brothers, not all, but some, to stumble because, you know, I was married once, and my wife used to say, if a woman was to talk to my husband like that, she'd have to climb over me first. But yet, because of the way that our society, with the microphone and the electronics, etc., this stuff is just being piped constantly, and this is what our young people learn, and so they get up and they try and mimic what they have seen. You can make an offering, or render an offering to God, without the attention being drawn to yourself, or without the thoughts being of a sensual nature. And that's what's important. Too much of the entertainment today, and that's what it is, in Christian music, it's entertainment. Music in the Bible was directed for the glory of God. We experience the secondary benefit. But it's to be pleasing to God, period. Because everything was created for His glory. Jesus loves me. This I know. What's wrong with this song?
Jesus loves me. This I know.
May I have this dance? Yeah. Listen to the way the music is being played also. You can hear the improvisation of the piano, the drums, very subtle, but it's in the back. This is jazz. Okay? The manner in which he's scooping his voice is very sensual. What you're going to say now. Yes, Jesus does love you. But I have to control my feet and my body because it is appealing to my carnal nature. Okay. What about this? You got the message, okay? I used to come out on stage. This is Broadway fanfare. And I used to slide out on stage to that kind of music. Here's Derrol, you know? And so when I hear that now, and that's old music. I mean, that's 30 years old. But I still have to plant my feet because it makes me feel like I want to come back out on stage. And look at me. You know, it's Broadway fanfare. So, let's clear the air. So someone will say, what's the big deal? It's just music. We have to remember one of the basics of the great controversy. Satan is a liar and a murderer, and he only has one goal. He wants to deceive and destroy mankind, and while he still makes sin appear as a delight to the eyes and to the desire to make one wise. You see, when he offered Eve the fruit, she wanted to be a God. She thought, she might have said, I like it. It's not about what you and I like. It's what God is trying to do in our hearts and what God says. All Satan is trying to do in the end is kill you, because Satan is a murderer. So he will misrepresent, misapply, and pervert everything he possibly can to deceive, if possible, the very elect. So it's not just music or just anything, everything in our lives as Christians, preparing for the second coming of Christ. Everything is important. The choices that we make from here on in we have to be mindful that Jesus is about to step out of the most holy place. And where do you and I be found? We don't know if today is our last day. I've had people say, well, I've heard that all my life. Fine. Your life could end today. Our probation could close today. So we have to be walking with God moment by moment, day by day. It doesn't matter if you think he's not coming for the next 500 years. Your probation could close today. Mine could close today. I want to be ready when Jesus comes. Because we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against the powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. It is for you to yield up your will to the will of Christ. And as you do this, God will immediately take possession and work in you to will and to do of his good pleasure. Your whole nature will then be brought under the control of the Spirit of Christ, and even your thoughts will be subject to him. Beautiful. You cannot control your impulses, your emotions, as you may desire, but you can control the will, and you can make an entire change in your life by yielding up your will to Christ. Your life will be hid with Christ in God and allied to the power which is above all principalities and powers. Amen. 5 Testimonies, page 514. God's word is powerful. God's word is true. Thank you for your patience, brothers and sisters.
Now we are in a time that in the politic world we see the planet Earth goes to the end. So we have to make a decision in our lives, also in music, what we do in our homes, what we do in our schools, and what we do in our personal life. This decision has an eternal validity if we go to heaven, yes or no. When Jesus Christ comes, he cannot take persons who are belonging to the music of Satan. Then in heaven there is no music of Satan. We belong then to the choir of angels. So now it is the time of grace that our names is in the book of heaven, inside or outside. And when our names are outside, we will be distracted and not going to heaven. So, brothers and sisters, let us make a contribution to our souls. If we are real in the real music of Jesus Christ and the angels of heaven in our souls, what our pastor tells us the whole day, or if we are in the song or in the music of Satan. The last group will never go to heaven. So please take this to your mind, to your spirit, and to your heart. God bless you.
Okay, I have a question about traumatizing and stuff. You were talking about song Wonderful, Wonderful, Merciful Savior, or the drama part. A lot of times we notice in the Seventh Adventist churches around the world that pantomime is used in the church. And probably also sign languages. Is there something you can say about that? Briefly?
There's a time and a place for everything. And I don't believe the church is the place. God has shown us how to worship Him. God has told us. We don't need, personally, I don't think we need these modern forms of expression, or what they call modern forms of expression, to worship God. He's made it very clear when we come into the sanctuary, again, how we're to worship Him. And I personally, coming out of, I don't know pantomime, if you will. I know what it is. But I was an actor. And I knew that when I was an actor, I had to become someone else. In other words, God made me Derrol Sawyer. And when I started acting, I emptied myself of who I was to become someone else. And I don't think that that's God's plan, personally. I don't think that that's what God, I know He doesn't want that for me. Because different things would happen that I can't go into right now, but I can actually tell you that I became someone else. And that's how seriously I took it. So, I don't know, to be honest with you, I don't have the answers for everything. The ins and outs of pantomime, but personally, I don't see the need for it in the worship service. God has shown us how to worship Him. He was very specific in the beginning with Cain and Abel. He was very specific with Nadab and Abihu. And down the road, even the specifications with David and Saul. When God says something, He means it. He just wants us. We complicate it, and it's really simple. Just do what He says. Take the Bible, the Word of God, as it is written, as He says. And I believe that He's shown us how to worship. So that's my personal take. I can't give you an overall answer except I don't agree with it.
Amen.
Yes.
Brother, as you were saying, so as you were saying, because of modern technology, all these inappropriate forms of music, they are really everywhere. And it just occurred to me that, even in the toys of children, oftentimes they bring music into them, and when you push a button, then the music starts playing. But even if it's like the classical music type of things, they even put the drums in that. Yeah. So it's from a young age they try to get it in there.
That's right. That's right. Because eventually the music is what this one world movement is about, is getting everybody on the same boat. And music is part of what draws them in and hypnotizes them to accept this particular message that we know is not true. So he comes in subtly. Every avenue that he can possibly come in, he's doing music. Yes. You want to bring the microphone?
Before I became Seventh-day Adventist, I'm from Suriname.
Could you speak a little louder, please?
I'm from Suriname, and before we became Seventh-day Adventists, we were introduced, well, as a small child, you flow into the culture, like the beauty culture.
Yeah.
And one of the things we did, the drums was like everything. If you wanted to be possessed, we didn't even call it that. It's just like you were serving these spirits, the angels they call it.
Yes.
And one of the things they did, I saw the older people do, were with something called timba, it's like powder. They made their face white, and then they let this demon get in, this angel get in, because making your face white means that you're no longer there. Something else takes over, and that, you see that in the mind. You know, it's like you just check out so that something else can come in. And the drum is a very, very important thing in this culture. So when we became Christians, first we went to the Sunday church. The drum is all over the place. And you know, it's like the worship isn't even really a worship if the drums aren't there, because you're just so used to the drums being there, because of the culture also. And we experienced the drummer just checked out, and he was just possessed being in the beat, and he just takes you in that beat with him. And then we became Seventh-day Adventists. The Lord I got a dream, and he told me that I need to be in this church. And so I didn't even know anything about Seventh-day Adventism. He just told me. And I went, and it's such a culture shock. But I knew I was home. Amen. Because when I was in the Sunday church and I asked the pastor, why are we here at Sunday when Jesus went on the Saturday? Well, if the Catholic Church tells us it's Sunday, then don't complain. I wasn't satisfied with that answer. So when I came to, when I went to the Saturday churches, it was a culture shock. And the music, it was like, it's so quiet, but it brought peace and deliverance and more closer walk with Jesus.
Amen. Thank you, Michelle. Yes.
I still want to defend my statements. I did hear my elder brother Fritz telling you that you will come again, but not this year. And it breaks my heart. I'm being honest. Okay, maybe I didn't understand your English. Pardon me. You know, we trifle with the things of God, and we play gallery with the devil. You did quote Psalm 77. 13. Thy way, O Lord, is where? In the sanctuary. And in the sanctuary, we allow anything to come in there. And it grieves the Lord. If God could command that somebody who went to pick firewood on a Sabbath day should be stoned. You know, we come here, we are not mindful of the things we do on a holy Sabbath day. You did remind us of second selected messages, page 36, and what she saw in Indiana. These drums and the type of music. If, you know, repetition deepens impression. If such message we heard today should be at least once in a month. I'm being honest. Let us be honest. It may not be from you.
Yes, I understand.
If it is brought into the church once in a month, the people that matter most, we have little ones who are being swayed away with these currents, and they are not being guided by their parents. Especially, you know, some of the priests in the home, they have deserted the home. They are the weakest individuals. And when you see them, when you read Isaiah 3, I'm a woman, 3:12. When you read it here, you know what? Children are being what? Oppressed. Who are the leaders? The women. And they lead my people astray. You know, I love my sisters. But when some of these weak brothers leave the home and allow some of us restless. Let me be mindful of my words. We need to educate one another. If we have these messages at least once a month, some of us who are straying could be packed into the similitude of heaven. But when we don't have any, when I use the word, we are just roaming just like the world. We are not being fed as we're supposed to. And a lot of us are being malnourished spiritually. I don't know how we can inculcate this into the system so that our young ones, some of them were here this morning, and they are now flying base. They are not here again to hear the message. And it grieves my heart. From the way I feel the pain. But I don't know how we can, because we don't have any time anymore. She says, get ready, get ready. You cannot get ready. Be ready. Amen. Because you don't know when. Thank you.
Amen.